you a woman in medicine feeling overwhelmed and disconnected from the personal fulfillment that you desire? You're in the right place. Join Doctors Joanne and Aaron as they rewrite the rules for women in medicine. Let's begin.
Life rarely moves in straight lines. We often find ourselves celebrating birthdays, career milestones, or family joy, while at the same time, the world carries tragedies, or our personal lives holds grief, uncertainty, or loss. We've been talking about so many things that are going on in the world, and this ability to hold different emotions at the same time, it's called by psychologists a hold paradox. And it's something that we need to be aware of and we need to learn to do a little bit better. So I cannot wait to interview my extraordinary co-host, Dr. Erin Hurley, about this topic of our ability to hold distress and celebration at the same time. So, yay, welcome, Erin.
Thanks so much, Joanne. I love that intro. And we have talked about many times of distress over this past year plus that we've had this podcast. And being able to also look for the good stuff is so key, especially right now.
Yes. And as you guys know, both Erin and I are coaches and we help a lot of women in medicine. And this is one of the things that I talk the most about, of holding space for ourselves when we're dealing with multiple emotions. And I wanted to ask you, Erin, how do we make space for both, for example, anxiety and joy without dismissing either?
It can take practice and support and sometimes listening to other people's perspectives. And this is something that I've been working with my clients over the past several weeks, because it seems like there's been lots of individuals having really bumpy times, whether it's losing staff, having ailing family members, extended family circumstances. And for some of them, it's been one thing after another after another. And yet, when we train ourselves to be on the lookout, so for example, my coaching calls almost always start out with, let's celebrate a win. And some of my clients, they come prepared with their wins for the day. What's something we can celebrate today? And that's training our brains, training our reticular activating system. Even when we're having a tough day, there are still wins to find. And we sometimes need to take a little bit of effort to look for them and practice, and then it gets easier and easier. And we can hold both the distress and the celebrations at the same time. And when we do, what I find is it helps make it so that even when we're having a day that's super bumpy, then we can still say, oh, and at the same time, here's this thing that's going on. For example, the day we're recording this is September 17th, and this is National Physician Suicide Awareness Day. There is a day dedicated to physician suicide awareness, which breaks my heart. At the same time, I had my first group coaching session with a new clinic that I'm onboarding, and the providers were so engaged and so hopeful and so ready to learn new things that will help them decrease the burnout that they're experiencing. And I had 2 Zoom meetings with that office, and my internet went out right before the Zoom meeting started. Okay, that's frustrating. Can I make that I could make that ruin my whole day, or I can say, you're a good problem solver, Erin. Let me get the meeting up and running, apologize that it started a couple minutes late, and let's get going and make the most out of it. So we don't need to let a little bit of, or sometimes a lot of sorrow or distress or anxiety take over our entire picture of the world of what's going on.
Yes, and I want to mention, even though Erin is usually the one who mentions the numbers of the episodes, I do have, if you haven't listened to this, go back to episode 132, where we talk about physician suicide. And then episode number 133, we interviewed Corey Feist, and it was such an amazing conversation about the importance of prevention and different things that we can do at a individual level and then also as a systemic level. So don't miss out on those episodes. And Erin, you reminded me actually this week and a couple of weeks ago during my group coaching with the women physicians I coach, we actually had one session that it was all about celebrations. And I thought it was going to be like, I usually prepare ahead of time. And I said, this is going to be like a simple call. It was a day I wanted to celebrate something big. So I said, I really wanted to share with them. And I was thinking, oh, this is going to be like a short call. And it ended up being this beautiful, our usual 2-hour call. And it was kind of sad and at the same time beautiful of how much prompting we had to go through to really come up with a list of things that we wanted to celebrate. And when we make this into a practice, it's easier because then our brain starts looking for it. While at the same time, there are things that we can, reframe. I think in coaching, we learn a lot to reframe or in, when we're doing psychotherapy. But there are things that we can't just think ourselves out of. There are emotions that we have to process and we have to sit with for a little bit. And this kind of holding these emotions at the same time can give you that fuel in your emotional battery. And it can also give us that balance, which is also prevention for other topics that we talked about in terms of burnout and anxiety. And right, like Erin mentioned, the thinking even of the worst outcome of suicide. So I love this conversation. And I wanted to ask you, because I know that this is something that you talk a lot about as well, of how can we use community and connection in helping us carry this different range of emotions at once?
Oh, community is so important. And Joanne and I love talking about community. And as I'm building community between providers who have worked at the same office, some of them for 7 to 10 years, and yet by creating a group coaching program within their organization, just this morning, as I was having them share, and then one says, oh yeah, I'm having that same struggle too. And oh yeah, that too. And all of this acknowledgement where it's not this isolation, it's a me problem. It's an us problem. And with that us problem, now how can we band together and create an us solution? And as I say, when you have one person, one number, there is zero math you can do with that. You just have one. When you put another person, and I've got my fingers holding up if you're not watching on YouTube, you got two people, two numbers. Now you can do addition and multiplication and subtraction and exponential math where 1 + 1 might equal 4. And that's where when we band together in community, we're taking full advantage of the numbers that can work in our favor, because with one person, you fall down, it's just you who has to pick yourself back up. You're on a team or you're in a community with 3, 4, 5, 10 others. One person stumbles, you got a whole team to carry them if needed. And everybody's going to keep moving forward. And in medicine, we are so trained to be independent and isolated and not talk about the hard stuff, which is one of the many reasons why Joanne and I have this podcast, why we talk about the hard things, is when we can talk about the struggles we're having while practicing medicine, because we're human beings, not robots, then we can learn from others with their successes, and we can recognize it's not a me thing. This is maybe systemic, and learn how to make changes and lean on others to get you through the hard times, or learn from them to move even faster, which is how I see my life, having made so many changes in the last 8 years since I hired my first coach, began joining masterminds, working on personal development, reading books outside of medicine. In 8 years, I have changed exponentially more than I did in the 30 years prior, because I stopped trying to do it on my own DIY. I started leaning into community really hard, and the results were completely different.
I love that. It's in the connection that we heal and that we can be vulnerable with each other and learn so much. I love that. And I love it when I hear you talk about it with such passion. And kind of adding to what you're saying, what do we need to pay attention in terms of why this is important for women in medicine?
Oh, women in medicine are so strong. They're so intelligent. They are so independent. And most of them have such a high pain threshold. It is so high that is on some of the prior episodes Joanna's shared. When they have depression, it looks different. They're still showing up to work. They're still getting their work done because we have just created this really high threshold for pain. We tolerate not using the restroom, not eating, not sleeping. Our pain tolerance is so high that it really makes it difficult for us to recognize, I need some help. This pain is too much. I can't keep going this way. And when we can realize that we don't have to be superhuman all the time, we can ask for help and support and delegate and not always say yes. We can use boundaries to serve us and those that we serve. But it takes a huge mindset shift. When I worked with my first coach, I had to unlearn so many things that I had been taught in medicine about boundaries are a weakness. No, boundaries are a strength, that you just have to suck it up and keep going, grind through it, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And I'm sure that sounds very familiar to many of our listeners. And yet when we acknowledge our own humanity, our feelings, our limitations, and we can intervene before catastrophe hits, before there's major disasters. And then we can develop, maybe recalibrate our thermostat, our internal thermostat, to say, oh, I'm aware now, this is how I get that grumpiness or whatever that is, that pit in my stomach, that anxiety, that nausea, whatever that, maybe it's a physical feeling or that anxiety, that's your body and your brain telling you, pay attention. Something's going on here. Do you need a break? Do you need a day off? Do you need to plan your next vacation? Do you need a hug? So when sometimes our strengths become our weakness, and it's okay to lean into the less strong side of yourself more of the time and allow other people to carry the load for you.
Yeah, this conversation is touching my heart. The other thing that comes to mind is also how just with what we do, so many physicians, we hear difficult stories all the time. We are seeing people who are sick, going through a hard time. You know, I can only imagine the other specialties, what they go through. And we have to have that, have so many emotions that we're dealing with about other people, but we cannot make them ours. So we learn to numb that down. And then we hold it. And then we don't always then take time for ourselves. And then we might even feel guilty if we're feeling good afterwards or to celebrate. And we know that imbalance is part of what puts us at risk for that compassion fatigue or burnout or that numbness that so many physicians feel again. So it's this conversation is very important to, again, like we always say, have that awareness, zoom out, pause, and then look at the bigger picture and give yourself permission to have all the feelings and like to repeat what Erin said, lean in and ask for help. Ask yourself, what do I really need in this moment? And it's okay to delegate and do something different to get a different result.
You had talked about numbing down, holding it in. I think I might have talked on a prior episode. I had a long conversation with my son who grew up with me as his mom, and the word he kept using was disconnected. And I think of how many times we're physically there, but we're not fully present. And when we can learn to be fully present, even in distress, even in the heartache, even in the sorrow, instead of numbing it down or disconnecting from that, I believe that's also one of those things where can we get better at not only looking for the celebrations and the wins, but also in that sorrow, grief, and loss, connect with it. How does that feel? And deeply feel those emotions too, because if we can't feel that deep sorrow and loss, we're not going to be able to fully feel the celebrations and the joy either. And so if we refuse or work hard at numbing it or disconnecting from the hard stuff, it may be disconnecting us from the whole picture, the ups and downs, highs and lows, cold and hot, light and dark. They all go together to make this beautiful world that we have. And we, one isn't necessarily one over the other or better than the other. It all comes with this thing we call life.
And that disconnection is part of what keeps us from having awareness of that we're struggling or that we're leading into burnout or we need help and we just say that we're fine. So it's so important. And Erin, you mentioned a few things already, but what are other things that we can do to practice this balance in our daily lives?
I love saying the word catastrophize. I don't love the outcome when we catastrophize, but somebody mentioned, it's basically, let me start that over again. That's like it cut at 16. We can do so many things. And unfortunately, one of the things we often do is catastrophize. So we take one small thing. I mentioned my Zoom meeting crashed not once, but twice for two very important meetings that I was the host and I couldn't be there on time. I could have catastrophized it, ruined the entire meeting, and yet one of the activities that I regularly participate in is meditation. That has strengthened my ability to have a strong foundation, to stay calm when things get bumpy or chaotic, to not catastrophize, to get my thinking brain back. I'm pointing to my frontal lobes instead of my primitive rat brain. That's the instinctual one that oftentimes can come into play when we get derailed. And looking at it and asking, is this really as big of a deal as I think it is? And if it is, okay, pull out all the stops and get the resources in to address it, ask for help. And if not, can you be like, okay, I can get over this, and not rewrite your entire day because of something that happened early on, right? You could write off an entire 24-hour period because you had 5 or 10 or 20 minutes of struggle. So one of it is, what's your mindset? You are with your mindset 24/7. You have the most control over your own mindset because nobody else is with you 24/7. So number one is pay attention to your mindset. And if it's not serving you, if it's catastrophizing or making things worse, rewrite the script. And that's your brain telling your body it's okay. Joanne, I think, alluded to this earlier, and we've talked about you can also have your body tell your brain it's okay. And that's where deep breathing, longer exhale than inhale, box breathing like they do in the military, visualization. You can get your body to a calm place, and then it tells your brain everything's okay. A walk outside, again, the breathing, meditation, getting your parasympathetics triggered. So again, if you can't talk your brain out of something, maybe start with your body first. Tapping is something else. I don't think a lot of physicians know about tapping. I've used it myself. I've recommended it to many of my coaching clients. And it basically is tapping on different points. I'm tapping on my face and under my eyes and on my chin. And it's triggering some of the acupuncture points with different sayings. And again, it's a trigger for the parasympathetics. Those are all things that we can do to rebalance the script. And if you try something and it doesn't work, maybe it means you haven't tried it long enough, or maybe try something else. For other people, it's exercise, burning off that cortisol. And also the big caveat is getting enough sleep, quality sleep. If you can't get quantity of sleep, working on the quality of your sleep. And I know for me, the last few weeks have had an ER visit in the middle of the night, dealing with family illness, tons of stuff going on around the house and with my business. And I was like, I have to get the best sleep I can based on the circumstances. And that's just something that learning what is it for you that's going to be the biggest needle mover and focus on that. For me, meditation and sleep has been my focus the last few weeks to try to get back on track ASAP. So just a few ideas.
That's so good. I love to add, very in alignment with what you're saying,
I know what you're going to say. Oh, is it going to be journaling? I forgot the journaling. And you're so good at it.
I wasn't going to say that, but yes, journaling 100%. I was going to say self-compassion, which is one of my favorite topics when I'm coaching. And it's so difficult to, women in medicine struggle a lot with that self-compassion because the guilt and the shame and the self-judgment can be so loud. So it's a very gentle way to talk to ourselves. So it's so important. I'm loving this conversation because, again, it's something that sounds simple, but we struggle with this. And if we leave our brain to its own ways, it's very negative. It catastrophizes. I do like that word too. I think because I'm a psychiatrist, not that I like that happening a lot at all. And how important, and kind of reviewing some of the things that you said of, first of all, having the awareness of both emotions, because we're human. We have this full, gigantic range of emotions, and we don't always know how to identify them or give ourselves permission to feel it, and that it is 100% appropriate when you do. And of course, how coaching has helped us both individually and how we can see it in other people as well. And one of our favorites, community and connection. And again, in reviewing things that we can do, having that mindset shift where we start with that awareness and the reframe when we can. And yes, I love how you said it, of start with our bodies, because there's so many options there, like you said, mentioned the breathing and the exercise and sleeping and all that good stuff. And again, recognizing it for ourselves and sharing it with other people, because that's, if you're listening, you are a role model, and we need to spread all this good information. Erin, any last minute word of advice you want to give us?
It takes practice. If we are used to catastrophizing or not being able to hold the distress and the celebration at the same time, just practice it more often and hold yourself accountable. And it's not being Pollyanna-ish that everything is positive. We're not minimizing the distress. Practicing holding them at the same time and realizing one doesn't need to negate the other or overshadow the other. And if you struggle with that, then share with others. Maybe if you're used to starting off conversations in a negative manner, ask a colleague or a trusted friend, hey, if you notice me going off on the negative, would you give me a signal to remind me, so somebody you can lean on external accountability? And the more you practice being able to hold those both at the same time, the more comfortable it will feel and the easier it will become.
Thank you so much. Loving this conversation, and I hope you are all enjoying it all. And with that, stay tuned. Our next episode is coming right up.
Do you want exclusive resources and the opportunity to connect with us? Then visit createmeaninginmedicine.com now, where you'll dive deeper into how you can create meaning in medicine. And if you're serious about optimizing your results, take 2 quick steps now. Connect with us on the website and tune in to the next episode.